Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Kathryn Kuhlman's book, Nothing is Impossible with God. Have you heard of this book?
Oh, yeah. It's full of incredible stories of healing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And today we're going to be focusing on one in particular, and that's the story of Marguerite Bergeron.
Oh, yeah. Her story's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just about the healing itself, but it's more about her journey and her struggle with her faith, and the unexpected ways that hope can really manifest. It's a very human experience.
It is. So before we get into the healing and all of that, can you kind of paint us a picture of what Marguerite's life was like before this whole thing happened?
Well, just imagine, living with crippling arthritis for over 2 decades.
Wow.
Marguerite couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. Her hands were deformed from the disease, and the constant pain was just excruciating.
Oh, that's got to be awful.
Yeah.
So how did she even hear about Kathryn Kuhlman?
Well, it all starts with a phone call from her son, Guy. And he calls her all excited, telling her about this local man, Roma Moss, who was completely healed at one of Kuhlman's services in Pittsburgh.
Wait, so someone she knew actually experienced a miracle?
Yes. Roma had been suffering from, I think it was a pretty serious condition, but after attending one of Kuhlman's services, he was completely healed.
Wow. So you would think that hearing news like that would fill Marguerite with hope, right?
You would think so, but her initial reaction was actually quite the opposite.
Really?
She was skeptical, disbelieving, even resentful.
That's interesting.
Yeah, here she is, struggling day in and day out, and someone else gets a miracle.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think about, the complexities of faith and suffering. Like, why would someone react with anger or bitterness when others experience healing?
That's a really good question. I think it would be hard to grapple with that sense of unfairness, especially when you're in so much pain.
Absolutely. And on top of that, Marguerite was a devout Catholic.
Yeah.
So the idea of attending a service outside of her own faith, a Protestant service, as she called it, felt almost wrong to her.
Right. So there were these religious boundaries she was wrestling with, too.
Exactly. These deep-seated beliefs about, what was acceptable and what wasn't.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the inner turmoil she must have been going through.
Yeah, I bet. So what ultimately pushes her to consider this journey to Pittsburgh?
What's this glimmer of hope, this tiny spark that refuses to be extinguished?
Uh-huh.
Despite her skepticism, something inside of her whispers, what if?
Yeah.
And that what if is powerful enough to make her embark on a 600-mile bus journey with her husband, Paul, who also had health problems.
Wow, 600 miles.
Yeah.
That's a serious commitment, especially when you're in constant pain. Sounds like a turning point.
It is a turning point, yeah. It's the moment where her doubt starts to give way, even just a little, to the possibility of something extraordinary.
So they decide to go. What happens next?
Well, the morning of their departure, Marguerite wakes up in absolute agony.
Oh, no.
The arthritis has flared up worse than ever before. It's like every joint in her body is screaming in pain.
Oh, you have to feel for her. Just when she's trying to take this leap of faith, her body betrays her.
And to make matters worse, she's convinced that God is punishing her for even considering going to this service. Imagine that feeling, that fear that you're being punished for seeking healing.
Oh, man, that must have been so emotionally draining. Did she want to give up at that point?
She almost did, but thankfully Paul, her husband, steps in. He's her rock in that moment. He reminds her that God wouldn't abandon her, that she needs to hold on to that sliver of hope.
That's great. Sounds like he had a lot of faith in her in this whole journey.
He did, and with his encouragement, Marguerite manages to get ready, even though it's incredibly painful. They somehow make it onto the bus, ready for that long ride to Pittsburgh. But remember, this isn't just any bus.
What do you mean?
This is a chartered bus filled with people who are also seeking healing at Kathryn Kuhlman's service.
Wow, so they're all on this journey together. What was the atmosphere like?
You can imagine the mix of emotions, anticipation, anxiety, and a lot of faith. And as they set off, Kathryn Kuhlman's representative, Mrs. Maudie Phillips, starts moving through the bus, offering comfort, answering questions, and really creating this sense of community. It's almost like she's preparing them for what's to come.
So she's easing their worries, guiding them on this pilgrimage.
Yeah.
What about Marguerite? How is she feeling at this point?
Well, she still had a lot of questions, especially about, being on a Protestant bus and attending a service outside of her Catholic tradition. But Mrs. Phillips beautifully explains that it's a Jesus bus, a place where those labels don't matter.
That must have been such a powerful moment for Marguerite.
Yeah.
It sounds like it started to chip away at those religious boundaries she'd been struggling with.
It did. She begins to relax, even dozes off during the journey. And that's when the truly unbelievable happens.
Okay, so what happens? What happens on the bus?
So picture this. Marguerite wakes up from her nap and casually glances down at her legs, and her ankles are crossed. Something that she hasn't been able to do for years because of the arthritis.
Wow, so she's being healed right there on the bus.
All right, there on the bus. Hundreds of miles away from Pittsburgh, something incredible is happening. And get this, she feels no pain.
Oh my gosh.
It's like the arthritis has just vanished.
You know, that makes you think about the power of belief, right?
Yeah.
Like she set out on this journey with this tiny little sliver of hope. And even before she reaches her destination, things start to change.
It's a powerful testament to the idea that healing can begin the moment we open ourselves up to the possibility.
That's so true.
But that's not all. Remember Paul, her husband, who had his own health issues?
Oh, yeah, he had a heart condition, right?
Right. Well, while Marguerite is napping, he feels this intense wave of warmth just coursing through his chest and down into his legs.
Wow.
It's so powerful that it momentarily blinds him.
So they're both experiencing these profound physical changes, but in totally different ways.
It's like this wave of healing is washing over them, touching them each in a way that's specific to their needs.
That's amazing. So what happens when they finally arrive in Pittsburgh?
Well, the bus stops for a coffee break,
Yeah.
and that's when the reality of Marguerite's healing becomes undeniable.
Okay.
She gets up from her seat, walks down the aisle, and descends those bus steps, all without a single cry of pain.
Wow. I bet the other passengers were stunned. To see someone who boarded the bus in agony now moving with such ease, it must have been incredible.
Think about it. The night before, she's begging her doctor for pain relief, relying on pills just to get through the day, and now she's leaving those pills untouched in her suitcase.
Wow.
She's sleeping soundly for the first time in years and waking up feeling revitalized.
It's like she's been given a second chance at life. What about Paul? Did his healing continue?
Absolutely. The heart pains are gone. He's feeling energetic, even walking several holes on the golf course with their son.
That's great. It's beautiful how they both experienced healing on this journey, supporting each other every step of the way.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of our well-being, how one person's healing can ripple out and touch those around them.
So they finally make it to the service. What's it like?
Well, Marguerite, who had been worried about not being able to stand for long periods, ends up standing for hours outside the First Presbyterian Church, just eager to be a part of it all.
It really shows how much her mindset has shifted. No longer consumed by pain and limitations. She's embracing this experience with her whole heart.
And when she finally steps inside that church, imagine the atmosphere, the music, the collective energy of thousands of people all seeking healing and connection.
It must have been overwhelming.
Yeah, and then in a moment that seems almost scripted, Kathryn Kuhlman calls out Marguerite from the stage.
She actually recognizes her from the crowd.
Yeah, she acknowledges Marguerite's healing on the bus, which is incredible. This quiet woman from Ottawa is suddenly in the spotlight, sharing her story with thousands of people.
Wow, what a moment.
It's like stepping onto a whole new stage one, where she's not defined by her pain, but by this incredible testament to faith.
So what does she do?
She embraces it fully. She stomps her feet, claps her hands, bends over to touch the floor. It's this powerful display of gratitude, a celebration of her restored body.
She's finally free to express her joy, her gratitude without any limitations.
Exactly. And then Kathryn Kuhlman touches her shoulder.
Okay.
It's a simple gesture, but it triggers this overwhelming feeling in Marguerite.
What does she say it feels like?
She describes it as if the heavens opened up and God himself reached down to touch her.
Wow.
And when she stands back up, there's no pain, only this incredible sense of peace and wholeness. It's a moment where faith and healing converge in the most dramatic way.
So what happens after this incredible experience at the service?
Well, she returns to her seat just overwhelmed with gratitude. It's fascinating because at this point, she's no longer fixated on being in a Protestant church.
Yeah.
She's caught up in the moment, singing along with everyone else, even though she doesn't know all the words.
The walls have come down,
Mm-hmm.
and she's experiencing a deeper connection to something beyond those denominational boundaries.
Exactly. The healing wasn't just physical, it was a transformation of her spirit. And when they finally return home at 2 a.m, there's no trace of exhaustion.
Really?
She's dancing with joy, calling her children, sharing the good news with everyone who will listen.
Wow, that contagious joy is so powerful. 22 years of pain and suffering seem to just melt away, replaced by this incredible exuberance.
And it's not just Marguerite who notices a change. Her family describes her as less irritable less prone to nagging. It's like the healing extended beyond her physical body, softening the edges of her personality that had hardened over years of pain.
It's a beautiful reminder that healing can touch every aspect of our lives, even our relationships.
The following Sunday, Marguerite walks to her Catholic church, not with a cane or in pain, but with a heart full of gratitude.
She returns to her own faith, but with a newfound perspective.
Yeah, she even takes the priests copies of Kathryn Kuhlman's books, wanting them to understand the profound experience she had outside of their shared Catholic tradition.
That's amazing. It shows how much her worldview has expanded.
Of course, she also visits her doctor, who is astonished by her transformation.
Oh, I bet.
He examines her hands and knees, the very places ravaged by arthritis, and can only marvel at her complete healing.
What did he say?
He admits he doesn't understand it, but he's clearly happy for her. It's a moment that speaks volumes about the limitations of medical knowledge and the potential for something beyond our understanding to create miraculous change.
It's a reminder that there's still so much we don't know about the human body, about the power of belief and the potential for healing. So she's healed. She's back in her routine. Life is good. End of story.
Not quite. This is where it gets really interesting. The next month, Marguerite returns to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
But this time, she brings 17 members of her family and friends with her,
What?
including a Catholic priest.
No way. The woman who was initially hesitant to even step foot on a Protestant bus is now leading a whole group back to Kathryn Kuhlman's service.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That's a huge change.
It really speaks to the transformative power of her experience. You know, her healing became a catalyst, not just for her own life, but for those around her.
Yeah.
It's like she couldn't contain this newfound joy and faith. She had to share it.
It's like that ripple effect we talked about earlier, but on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about bringing people to the service, was it? There was something deeper going on with Marguerite's personal faith.
You're right. She talks about a profound shift in her relationship with God. Before her healing, there was this fear. You know, she relied on Mary, the Mother of God, to intercede on her behalf.
Okay.
But after her experience, she has this newfound confidence to approach God directly.
So it's not just about the physical healing, it's about a spiritual transformation as well.
Yeah.
She found a more direct, personal connection to her faith. What an amazing story.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About the power of personal testimony and how one person's journey can really inspire and uplift others. Marguerite's story isn't just about her healing. It's about overcoming doubt, embracing faith, and finding that deeper connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that healing can come in the most unexpected ways, sometimes on a bus, hundreds of miles away from where you expect to find it.
Exactly. Marguerite's story is a testament to the power of hope and the unexpected places it can lead us.
Well, thank you for taking us on this deep dive with Marguerite Bergeron.
Of course.
It's been an emotional journey full of twists and turns, and ultimately a beautiful testament to the power of faith in the human spirit.
And for you listening, what resonates most with you? What part of Marguerite's story sparked something inside you?
We hope this deep dive has left you with a sense of wonder, and maybe even a renewed sense of hope. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep believing.